Hello everyone, welcome to my channel TechieTaught. Today we'll discuss about a topic called like how we'll maintain different versions of a particular document. So for example, when we are creating a particular document and there are multiple users, they are coming and editing the document, adding new features, or maybe there is certain issues or bugs and you are fixing it and then you are updating. So each time when you will do update for a particular document, so we are going to generate different versions and we will maintain that version in the MongoDB. So what is the purpose? So later you can go and verify the different versions, different contents, and you can see what are the difference, who has verified or who has modified, at what time he has modified, and what content got modified. So all these things you can like you will come to know, and that is helpful for your report generation or for your auditing purpose. Okay, so it's it's like very common like you can say ask or very common functionality wherever in your real time, right? So you will like you require to implement such kind of features. So today we'll just go through that. We'll create one application and I'll explain how to maintain those versioning of a particular content. So we are using here MongoDB, as I said. So because we will maintain the versions in MongoDB. So you can see here. So you have to come to this mongodb.com and on the download page, and you have to see the available downloads here, and you can choose the respective versions and then Windows and MSI and download and install in your local system. So this is for your MongoDB, and even I use something, I think 4.2.21, but you can use anything, so no problem. And once your MongoDB is installed, you can later install this MongoDB Compass. Okay, so this is the editor where you can fire your query, you can see your database, okay, and all those things. So basically, it's the editor for your database. And for this also, you can come to MongoDB Compass download page, and here you can choose your latest version, stable version, and exe file based upon your like operating system, and then you have to install it. So if you know or you want to know about how to like install MongoDB and how to configure MongoDB, or if you need some session on the MongoDB, so let me know in the comment box. I can create another video on this. But so once your MongoDB and Mongo Compass is installed, you can open your Mongo Compass here, and you can see this is your default connection, right? So localhost and 27017 is the default port. So then you can do connect and it will connect to your database. So for example, it will connect. So now you will connect to your local host, right? And you can see you have admin, which is the default. It will create admin config and whatever local. And this is the collection I have created. So you can, I'll show you what you need to do. And but here you can see different collections I have created under this database, but doesn't have any data. It will see books. It doesn't have the what are the version. So we'll create from the beginning everything. So so this is something regarding a MongoDB setup, right? And then since we are we'll create a Spring Boot REST endpoints. So we need to create a Spring Boot application. So for that you will need editor. So for that you can use Eclipse, so or IntelliJ or STS, whatever you are comfortable. I am using Eclipse, so you can download if you want to use Eclipse. You can download here, okay, and Then so what you need to do, so once all the setup is done, so you have to come to start.spring.io. So this is the official site. Okay. And so here you can create your Spring Boot application, right? So here we'll just create. So I want to create a Maven project, and we'll add all the Spring Boot related dependencies here. So I choose the project as a Maven project, the language as a Java, and I choose 2.7.2, which is most stable version. And then you can create, right? So for example, I won't change anything, but because I have already created, but I'll just show you. So you will choose, right? So for example, you can choose. I have given com.techieTaught, and this is a demo. Okay. And this is basically your base package, and this is your application or the project name. And this is something description about your application. And then this is your full path, right? So then if you are going to create a jar file, and then you can choose your Java version. So I'm using the OpenJDK 11. So I'm using this. Now you have to add your dependencies, Spring Boot dependencies. So since we are going to create a REST endpoint, a web-based application, so we have to use Spring Web. So you have to add this one. So you can see it's a RESTful or those MVC application you can use. So use this. And the next one is we need some dependency for MongoDB. So you can add here, and you can choose for Mongo. So if you choose for Mongo, you'll see there is a Spring Data MongoDB. Okay. So you can choose this, and then you can generate your project. So when you click on generate, what will happen? It will generate your project. So even here, I have added few things. For example, I have added aspect. I don't know whether it is available direct here or not. So this AspectJ, it's not available. So which you need to download. I will show you here. And then I am also using Swagger to test our endpoints, but Swagger is not available. Let me see if Spring Fox is available. So those are things are not available. So you have to search for manually. You have to search the dependencies in Maven, and you have to add it. But at least this is the basic, okay? And then you have already generated the application here. Let's go there, and it will do extract here, right? So you'll get a Maven project. So you'll go inside, and this is the Maven structure. So what you need to do, so you have to import this application. So go to your Eclipse, and then you have to uh, file, and you have to choose import, and then you have to choose Maven, and then you have to choose existing Maven project, right? So here, to get all these things right, first thing is, like, you can choose this, but you need to install your Maven in your local if you are not yet installed. So for this, you can search for your Maven installation. So for example, so you can go here and choose your latest version, whatever, right? So I'm using now 3.8.6. So once you will install your Maven, and once you will install this as well as the OpenJDK. So you have to, or JDK, whatever, right? I'm using OpenJDK 11. So you can go here and install. So then what you need to do? So you need to now set up your class path, right? For example, like these things you know, but I'm just explaining one more time. So when I'm doing Java, right? So you should get the version, right? And all these things, people will say MBN, you'll get the Maven version, right? 3.8.6. So for these, what you need to do? So you need to now go here, go to your PC and properties, and then you have to come to advanced system setting here, and then you have to click on the environment variable. So here you can either uh, set up here in the user variables, or you can do in the system variables. Since it's my local system, right, I'm just adding in my system variables. I'll just show you what I did. So these things, right, you have to create your Java home and your path to the Java folder. And similarly, you have to give Maven home and the Maven where it is installed. And once these things are done, then you have to come to path. There is a path variable here, and you have to choose up to bin. So this is your where you like your compiler and the runtime environment, everything is there. So you have to give this path, as well as you have to give another path for Maven. And similarly, since you have also installed your MongoDB, right? So you can also give the complete path up to bin in the MongoDB. So that what will happen? So you anywhere you can create your command prompt and you can start. For example, if I create MongoDB is already running, but I can start even like this. If you press enter, it will start your Mongo database from here itself. So no need to go inside your bin path and create, run it, right? So that is the best thing. So that's the reason I have to just set up the path. And so I set up the path for MongoDB. You can do that. For JDK 11, I have done. You can do that. And one for Maven. You can do all three things. And then once this is all done, so you can come here and you can choose existing Maven project. So you're importing your existing Maven project, right? And then it will ask. So you can choose now. You can, it is on my download. See, you can select folder. So what will happen? It will now give the POM file, and it will click on finish. It will show it here, right? So since I have already in the same way, I have imported Java book version. It's a Maven project. So I don't want to do that again, but just for your information, I have shown here. So let's come here. So then what you need to do. So once you imported your Maven project here, you have to go to Windows, Preferences, and you have to see what is your Java version. So the search for Java, click on the compiler, see what version you are using. So I am using 11, so I choose 11. If you are using something else, you can choose that. And then you have to choose your installed JRE. So here I'm giving the path of JDK 11. So if it won't show you, then you can add basically a new one and remove this one and set up all these things. So once all these things is done, so now let's go through the code. But before that, let me see. So I have shown you, so this is your installation. So, and the second one is for Compass Editor. I have also shown you how to do Eclipse. I have shown you, and then I have given you demo on the how to create a Maven Spring Boot application by using start.spring.io. Okay, now let's get started. So this is my Java book version. So what is this application? So I am just creating different Java books. For example, suppose you are creating Java 8, 8.1 or something 11, 12, whatever, and you are basically editing certain features or the content. Okay, so each time when you modify certain contents, it will create different versions in your MongoDB. So that is the agenda. So I'll show you that. So in this way, you can also create various versions in any of this content. So let's start with our POM file. So because this is where you should know what are the dependencies we have added. So you can see that I have chosen Spring Boot starter parent, which is 2.7.2, which is the latest one. So this is the by default it will add when you will create your Spring Boot application, right? And then this is my group idea, the package. So you will see under this is the best package, com.techieTaught, right? Followed by this is my application or the project name, followed by the project name. Okay. So in this way, our package will be created. And this is the version. So when it will create any jar, right? So this the version it will create. And this is you can add anything, but I have just given the description about this application, right? And the other thing is you have to mention what Java version you are using to create this application. So I'm using it OpenJDK 11, so 11 I'm using here. So then what you need to add, so when you choose MongoDB, so it will add a starter. So it will just bootstrap your MongoDB related dependencies. And for Spring Boot Web, so you need this because you need to create different controllers, endpoints, and so on. And then this is used for testing. So if you want to do any unit test for this application, and it's required that for that. Apart from that, I have added a couple of new things, right? So I've just added Swagger. For Swagger, you need these dependencies. So 3 dependencies you need to add. So Swagger, as you know, Swagger is mainly used to test your REST endpoints, right? So for that, we need, and Swagger is actually provided by SpringFox, right? So we can add Swagger 2 from SpringFox, which is the latest version 3.0.0. And then there is a bootstrap, right? So for this also we need to add 3.0.0. And then Swagger also provides UI to test, right? So for that you need to add these dependencies. So 3 dependencies. And you can see here, so I have just also given all these things. So you have to go here and if you search in Google, you can find SpringFox Swagger 2, which is 3.0.0, which is the latest one. And the other part is starter, right? It will start your Swagger. Basically, it will bootstrap your Swagger documentation, all these things. So these things is mandatory, and then you have to add the UI. Okay, these 3 things is required for the Swagger. And then what else? You need Aspect. You know that the Spring AOP provides aspect-oriented programming, right? Even there are other third party which also provides aspect uh, programming related libraries, you can say, right? So this is required when we'll create aspect-oriented programming languages, because we are using here aspect programming, so we need this, right? So there are like a couple of things. So you can use aspect runtime in dependency and aspect web AspectJ waiver, right? So basically I've given something. So this is the runtime environment for AspectJ programming with some definition. You can go through it what it is, and that is a waiver, you can say, on top of it, right? On top of the AspectJ runtime dependency, it also include this waiver to introduce advice to Java class. So advice, what is advice, what is join point, what is point card, will cover that. So all those things it will be provided by AspectJ waiver. So either you can use these 2 or even you can use only one. So you will use AspectJ tools with maybe the 1.9.7, which is the latest, might be the latest one. So that also working fine. So this is basically a superset, you can say, superset of these 2. But I was just testing with all these 3, so anyone is fine. So either you can use this or you can use these 2, right? So for this, I have also given here. So you can see this is the AspectJ waiver, and this is 1.9.7. You can add, And the next part is AspectJ runtime dependency, or you can add here. So this is your AspectJ, you can say site, main site, main repository site. You can go through what this waiver is doing, what is this runtime is doing, and these tools. So this one, if you add, basically this is the actually superset of these two. So you can directly add this, so no need to add these two as well. So if you click on this, right, it will give you, these are the all latest version. So I'm using this, and you can see you can use this dependency as well. Okay, you can try alternatively, so that you will come to know what is the use. And then so now you can see your home file is now done. And once this is done, right, so you have to come to now resources. So under this you have to go to this application properties file. Is nothing we have, it will by default it will create, but we are going to use application YML file instead of properties file. So in this application YML file, so this is very basic configuration you need. Basically, I need a project version and to print the version of the application. So project and then version, and then this project version where it will read from your home file, which is this version. Okay. And then you have to give your application name. So basically, I have given the application name is this, right? And then you have to configure your MongoDB. So you don't need any username, password, or authentication database in your local setup. But if you are using in your enterprise level applications, you need authentication database. And based on that, you can give your username and password here, authentication database here. But for local, I don't need that. So I just created a database. You can give any name, and there is a local host, and the port is the default one, 27017. Okay, this is done. And then by default, your Spring Boot application will run on 8080, but I just given 8085 just show you how to override your Spring Boot Tomcat port. Okay. And then for this application, when you load this application, we need a context path, right? So this context path, basically I've given, you can give any name, but I've given as a tech book. So when you give http://localhost/textbook, then your Swagger will load. So that is the purpose of this. And I have added this part, right? The use of this one is basically to delete this, right? Suppose I deleted this. And when you will start the application, this is a very common problem, right? So with the Spring Boot versions, basically. So if you're using for certain versions, it will work, but if you're working with some latest version, it might give you uh, errors. But just keep in mind, if you get such errors, then you should know what you need to do. I'm here just, I'll show you what is the problem you are getting and how to fix it. So basically, see what it is saying. It is not able to create your application context. And what is the reason? So it is saying unable to create this bin. Okay. And so if you are getting this line, something, this kind of exception, okay, it's a very common exception. Maybe for you, the bin name will come different based upon your configuration. But if something, it will be related to this kind of problem, right? Context is not getting created due to some bin, right? And it is giving some null pointer exception, right? And so what you need to do? So basically what is happening for each Spring Boot, they are using some default, you can say, uh, regular expression path matcher. So I'll show you what is that. So there is a path matcher because when you are using any regular expression to process that regular expression, they are using some matching strategy. So I, different versions have different some default match strategy, and might be due to that we are getting this error. But if you will get such kind of errors, you can just add your, this will come as a string, then MVC, then path match, then matching strategy. So you have to just use and path matcher. Okay, so this will resolve your the problem. Okay, this is a very common problem. You can resolve it by adding this. And now if you start, you can see your application will start. Perfect. Maybe this one you can just Google it, because what I just not able to recollect what is the default matching strategy Spring Boot is using, or each version is using, but that you can explore. So see, there is no error, and Spring Boot application started, right? So that is one thing. Then, so we have covered your pom.xml file, and we have covered the application YML file. And then what else? So we have to now jump to our controller. So here we need to create our controller, right? That means it is a REST controller we are going to create. So I'm just creating a REST controller here. So with the annotation a REST controller, and then I am creating two endpoint. One is post endpoint to create the book, other one is put endpoint to update the book, right? And these things I have just added. You can see API implicit params, right? So, and API operations. So those are required for Swagger. So it will just give you some documentation or some information about your endpoint. Okay. And then since it's a post mapping, so I'm just passing a model. So take book as a request body, right? Because this is the model I want to persist into our MongoDB. Okay. And what it contains? It contains book information. Okay. So now we'll create a tech book. So now I have created a tech book model class into this package. So in this tech, we can see here also. So there is a model package, and here I have a tech book model class, and there is a base entity class. So in this base entity abstract class, what I am doing, the commonly used fields I just added in one place, because ID is nothing but your Mongo ID. That's created at means at what time your document created, who modified, at what time modified, who created, all this information, right? And each model extends this base entity, so that at least you have no need to add all these things into each and every model. So that is the best way of defining your model classes. And then in textbook, you can see I'm creating a collection called books. So if you want to mention books here in the collection, it will create a collection textbook. Okay, so I just want to create a books collection here. And then I have couple of attributes, like when you will create a book, you need author, you need title, you need what is the size, means how many pages you have, basically what is the length of your book, 100 page, 200 page, 1000 page, like that, and what is the price. Then I have followed by certain constructors to initialize it, and some setter getter, and then some hash code equals usually the two string. So it is a common way of defining your model classes, nothing much to explain. And then what you need to do, then come back to your textbook controller. And then what, so now model I have created, then we need to create one service class, because I need to implement my business logic, right? So for that, I just created a textbook service. So you can see, so it's a, I have created in the service package, this is a textbook service. It has two methods, create and update a book, and both are returning a model called textbook and passing, they are actually accepting the parameter as a textbook, and throws some exceptions. Okay. And then since it's an interface, it should be implemented. So for that, we have an implementation package and we can come here. So now this is our create book implementation because we are overriding it, and then we need to do some action. So what action we need to do? I need to save the book into database. So for that, I need a repository because this repository, so it will, what it will do, it will create a connection, it will insert our data into our MongoDB. So how will create a repository? So I'll show you. So this is a repository. It's an interface you need to create. Okay, and this repository should extend your Mongo repository. So Mongo repository is provided by your Spring Data MongoDB. You can see the package here. And then when you create a repository, it should extend your MongoDB repository, and then you should pass your model. So that means on which model you have to perform your database operations. So I have to perform on the textbook, right? I need to persist this. So then you are passing this model class. And then what is your unique ID? Okay. My unique ID is Mongo ID, and Mongo ID is it's a alphanumeric value. You can find this base entity. It's a Mongo ID. So it's a string because it will contain alphanumeric value. So that's the reason I am passing it string. Okay. And since it's a repository, you need to add a repository tag annotation basically. Sorry. And forget about this. I will explain later after few minutes. So now let's go back to your service implementation class. And then you are saying repository.save because each repository has certain methods, predefined methods like save for insert and update. You have a delete, you have find one, find all, lots of other methods, right? So I'm just using save to save my record. And it will now save my record into database. And simply I'm returning it, and then I will return back, and then I'm using response entity because since it's a REST endpoint, and this will return response entity of textbook. Okay, so that means I have to do some typecast here. So the response entity dot okay, right? So that means a success scenario, and then I'm passing this response. So it will now convert into a JSON, and it will show in my Swagger, okay, or in Postman, whatever. So this way, your create book or your post endpoint works. Similarly, when you will do your put mapping, so similarly, you are also passing request body textbook and model, and then you will call similarly another method called update book in the service class, and then it will go inside the implementation. Again, you are doing the same thing. So you are creating a repository, just update this book. So this same method is intelligent enough. Based upon your MongoDB, it will find whether it's existing data or a new data. If it's existing data, it will update. If it's a new data, it will create. Okay, nothing much business logic here, simple. But the question is now how it will create different versions, right? To create different versions, you need to do few things. Okay, so what you need to do? So now you need to create one advice class here. In this controller package or in other package, you have to create one aspect component, you can say. So this is, so what is this aspect, right? In Spring AOP, there are few important, you can say, concepts like aspect, advice, join point, and point cut, right? Aspect in layman term, or like I'm not going through actually the complete theoretical definition, but very straightforward layman term definition. Aspect is nothing but the feature, okay, the functionality, okay, which will cross-cut your different modules, or which will actually spread across your different modules or different components or different classes. For example, logging. So logging is a feature which will actually, you have to add the logging in each and every module, in each and every classes, right? Suppose you have a different module, you have a payment module, you have a sales module, inventory module, customer module, right? So all these modules you need logging. So logging is a feature which is cross-cutting all your modular architecture or modular project, right? All these modules it required. So required to add, and each and every classes you need to add all these logging things. The next example is error handling. So when you are writing any class, any module, you need error handling. You need to manage the exception handling in your class. So that is again another feature which is cross-cutting your different modules. Okay, because Spring Boot application is a modularized applications, right? And then, for example, you can talk about transaction management or any CRUD operation you are doing. So this transaction management also is a cross-cutting feature. So it will touch across different classes, different modules, or different components, whatever you can say. So aspect is nothing but the feature which will cross-cutting, which is cross-cutting your different modules. Okay, simple. And then you, because here also we are doing this CRUD operation, right? So when you do the CRUD operation, we need to create the versioning. So now we are using only one model, okay, or one module. Now in real time, we might have different modules. So when you perform one feature, one transaction or something, so you need to like perform certain actions, uh, like to create some additional functionality or features, maybe before performing certain tasks, after performing certain tasks, like that. So I'll explain you here what we are doing. So you need to create one component, you can say aspect component, Spring AOP aspect component you are just creating. And for that, you need to add a add component and add aspect. Okay. And then what we'll do, the second thing is you need to now configure your repository. So here you need to configure two repositories, because when you will handle the versioning, now you need two models. So before going through this repository, let's go back to our model class. So when you'll come to this model, so but keep in mind, we have just explained aspect, and I hopefully the aspect is clear. Then we'll later discuss what is join point and point cut. So now let's go back to our model class. So in this model class, you can see, apart from this textbook, okay, we are having two different models. One is textbook version head, and other one is textbook version. Okay, so first let's go to this version head. So this version head, right, this is kind of a counter. So each time when you will create different versions, like a first time it will create version 0, then you will modify, it will create version 1, then you will again modify, it will create version 2, like that. So this version head will act as a counter, and it contains the metadata information about your versioning. So basically, what kind of metadata? So it will just store what content type. So for which content type you are maintaining the version, that content type. For example, I am maintaining the version for my textbook because my model is textbook. So that means that's the reason I've just created one property, version textbook type. So I am creating the version for the model textbook. Okay. And this is a textbook type. So because this is the metadata, right? So it should know for which content type we are going to create the version. So it's a textbook type. That's why we are added this. Second one is, what is your MongoDB ID? So when you create a, or when you insert any document, right? I am suppose creating a textbook. That means it's a Java book or some technical book, right? So I will get Mongo ID after it will insert a record into MongoDB. So that ID is required, because with that ID we can actually query our data. Okay, so because it's a unique ID, so that is mandatory. It is required to. It will help you to find the data, to query the data from MongoDB, right? And then it's a version number. So I just put head version number because it will, each time it will keep on incrementing. And then same, it should extend the base entity, and you can give your collection name followed by constructor, setter, getter, and your toString method. Okay. The next thing is you have to create your actual version collection. So another is textbook version. This is another model which also extends your base entity. And the collection name I have given book collections, book versions. Okay. So what it contains? It contains also the same thing, whatever the book version head contains, right? The version it contains the MongoDB ID for this textbook. It also contains the type, textbook type, and for which we are creating the version. Apart from these three things, it also has some additional attribute called snapshot. It's a return type object. Okay. So snapshot means what? So it's a copy. So copy of your each version. So copy means the whole content. So suppose you are creating a book, the first version is 0, and whatever data it will be available in this book's collection, it will copy that and it will available in this snapshot. For version 0, version 1, version 2, it will keep all this data under this snapshot, so that you can query each and every data based upon your version and a MongoDB ID, and you can generate your reports, or you can compare, you can do the audit, and whatever, like based upon your requirement, you can perform anything. So hopefully now the model is clear. So what you need to do? So next, what you need to do, you need to create one annotation. So you need to create basically one custom annotation. So I have just created a custom annotation called maintain version history. So basically it will just inform that maintain history or maintain versioning of each and every component whenever you are doing any CRUD operation. So for that, I have just created an interface. You can give any name, but this name is meaningful. That's why I just put this name, maintain version history. And this annotation, it will resolve, it should resolve at runtime. So that's why I am putting the retention policy each runtime. Okay. And the target type, it's a support type. So like we can choose a type. So these two things are mandatory, and you have to create one annotation like this. And I'll show you where you need to use. Then let's go back to our aspect component. So here, like, since you have created a class with component aspect, and we have created uh, models. One is for version head and version. So now we need to create also a repository for that. So we have created a textbook version repository and textbook version head repository. You can choose this, and if we see here, we have created textbook repository, which I have already explained. Similarly, we have for version head, we have created another repository, and here we are passing textbook version head, and for other things, we are also passing a textbook version, because for this textbook version, we want to perform some CRUD operation. And then we have added added one more method called to fetch the data. To fetch the data, we have added there is certain methods available like in Mongo. So like find by, find all, find by, find by one, like that. So here we can also construct our own method. So since see you can choose here, there is an attribute called version textbook ID, right? You can copy this and now come back here, right? Now you can say find by, and now just copy paste your attribute. Find by version textbook ID. And then this letter, right? It should be capital. So you have to make it as capital. So like that, you can make your method. So now find by version textbook ID, it requires this Mongo ID. So if you pass the Mongo ID, what it will give? It will give you textbook version. List of textbook version basically I took. But basically, since you are passing one ID, it will give you one textbook version, right? So similarly, for head, you have also another method. You can give one space here. Okay. So I think no need to explain about this. You know how to frame your method to pass the value, right? And then you need to, so once this is done, right, you have to come here. So you have to define, you have to auto-where these repositories into your advice class. Then you have to, now we are focusing on save and update operation, right? So when our record will insert and update, that time we will create different versions, right? So that's why I have just written one method called onSave. Okay, so when any save operation will happen, onSave, okay, and when this save method will called, I am saying after returning, means after the save operation is performed, then only you will execute this method. Okay, so when this save method will perform, so when you go back to our service implementation class, so when it will perform this, so once it will perform, it won't come here, right? So once this line will finish, once this execution finish, where the cursor will go, the cursor will come to this, right? And it will start executing this onSave. That's why after returning, okay? And then this onSave, what parameter it contains? We have to pass two parameters. One is join point, other one is response entity. What is this response entity? When this save operation happen, right? So when this save operation happen, what it is doing? It is returning a textbook model, right? So this is nothing but the response entity. Okay, it's a textbook entity or textbook model response. Okay, and then that's the reason this response entity is nothing but textbook model response. Okay, and then what is this join point? So join point is nothing but a point where the method execution starts. Okay, so join point is a point where the method execution starts. For example, so this is the service IMPL. So this is the point, okay, where the method execution starts. So on save, okay. So after this, okay, and then what will happen? So this is join point. It's a point at which the method execution starts. So then what we are actually saying to this join point. So we have to give some instruction to join point. So here join point, when the method execution starts, basically the same method is done, what you have to do. So for that, we have to give some regular expressions, okay, in a value. So this after returning, it has a attribute called value. where you have to pass a regular expression. So this is nothing but instructions to join point, right? So here what we are saying execute or okay. So what is this instruction? So this is nothing but the point cut. So we are saying this is the point cut. Okay. So point cut is a basically a predicate that helps match an advice uh, to be applied by an aspect, okay, at a particular join point. So for example, basically the join point is like when the save operation done, right? Then we want to uh, construct one predicate. So this is the predicate, you can say. This is actually the predicate or some instructions or some actions we are uh, giving to this join point. So what is the meaning to this? Execution of save method, okay, after the execution of save method, this is the public method and this is the return type. Whatever the return type we are not mentioning, star means any return type. So on execution of this save method with whatever parameter we are passing, okay, and we are passing on the this, we are passing CROD repository. So that means on execution of this save functionality, and if it is doing any CROD operation, right, or it implements the CROD repository, right? So for example, so it will go to our repository. Here you can see we are extending this Mongo repository. And if you can see Mongo repository is also extending paging and sorting repository. And if you can see it also extends CROD repository, right? So if it is using the CROD repository, so it is checking that, right? On execution of save method and in whatever like repository we are using. So if it is a CROD repository or it a CROD operation we are doing and returning one response entity. So we are returning our tech model as a response entity. So then what will happen? It will execute this method. Okay. And then what it will do? We got now the response entity model, right? Now we are typecasting to base entity because if you see the model class, each model class extends base entity. So this object we can typecast to this, right? So like here, what we are doing, the response entity, we are typecasting to our super class and we are getting the entity object. Next, what we are doing with this join point, right? We will get now what are the interfaces we have in our class. So when this join point means what? The point at which our execution starts, the method execution starts. So basically, if you see here, right? This is the point where the method execution starts. And here you can see we are using this repository. So we are using tech repository, we are using the version repository. We have three repositories, right? One is for version, one is for version head, other one is for textbook repository. So all these three repositories now you can find it here. So I'm going bit here and there because I need to explain it properly. So I'm trying my best because this is bit tricky and bit difficult to understand. So now here what you are doing, so you are getting the join point, you are getting the target. Based upon the target, you're getting the class and getting the interfaces. So basically what you will get all the repositories because on that save, you are calling all these repositories and all these repositories are interfaces, right? Okay. Then you will get one repository. So each repository, basically we have three repositories, so we will get three. So then you are checking if textbook repository means first repository is annotation present. This is another method of this class. Is annotation present which annotation present? We are saying this annotation present. Maintain version history annotation, which we have already created. So it will check. Now, first is our textbook version repository. Here that maintain history repository there? No. Right? No, it's not there. It will check for head. We have any maintain history repository annotation? No. For textbook, it will check. Yes, it find the textbook maintain repository. So what you need to do, this is your primary repository, right? Because this is the repository which is mainly used to insert or update your textbook model class, right? So here only you need to add your maintain version history annotation to instruct, to give the information that when we are going to insert or update this textbook, create the version. Okay. So for this repository only, it will find this criteria. Okay. Let's go back again. So now for this, it will be true for this textbook repository, so because it has this history. And CROD repository dot class is assignable from class, because this CROD repository, each repository is right internally. You will see the superclass, everything extends from CROD repository, right? So always this part will be true for repository case, not for all other. So whenever there's a repository, it will be true, but this part only taking the decision. So that means you have now 3 repositories, but for only one repository, you have to come inside, right? So then what it will do? So it will now check for getting your textbook version head by passing the Mongo ID. So initially, right? So initially there is no data in textbook version head, right? So it won't get any ID basically. So what it will do? Nothing. It won't get. It's a null, right? So since we are using now optional here, it will not give you null pointer exception, right? So that's why we are just checking. If the data present, do this operation. So initially for the first time, data won't be present. So you'll come to else block. So here what we are doing, we are creating manually. We are creating this version head, passing the type. So this response entity dot get class dot get name, it will give you textbook as a textbook type, right? The content type is textbook and the MongoDB ID. So MongoDB ID for what? For textbook, because you have now inserted one textbook data. What is textbook? So basically this data, right? The books collection. You are inserting, you are creating a book. Because when this method will call, when your save operation already performed, right? After that, it will come here because you are returning after returning. That means when it will reach this, right? You have already one ID, entity ID. But this entity ID, it will pass, it won't get this head results because head is not yet created initially. So that's the reason in else block, we are just creating this object manually. And then what we are doing, initially version I'm giving 0. Okay. And this model object we are saving into our MongoDB. And once this version head is saved, we got now MongoDB ID for this version. Later, we are creating the textbook version class. Okay. So in this textbook version, what we are giving, we are giving again what is the type of content for which we are maintaining the version. It's a textbook type. And then the textbook MongoDB ID, right? Then the version head number. So since we'll create a version head, by default it will be 0, right? That number we are passing here. And then we are passing the whole entity because we have a snapshot, right? In this textbook version, we have a snapshot also, this part. So this will contain the whole object. So that's the reason we are passing this object. And then we are creating a textbook version object and we are saving it, right? Second time when it will come, similarly it will check wherever the annotation present, it will come inside, and then that time for second time it will definitely get the version head data. So once this is available, once this is true, it will come inside and get the version head, and then it will just increment. So that is a increment version number, right? So we have just created, if you can see here, in this textbook version head, we have just created another method just to increment, because first time it will be 0, second time 1, 2, 3, like that it will increment, it will act as a counter, right? So that's the reason we are just incrementing here. So if there is a head data, version head data exists, then increment the counter and then get this head object. Once you'll get the head object and you have already increment your version, then save it. Later, then pass this version number, whatever. So 0 to 1 or 2 or 3, pass this to the tech version model and then save it. Okay. So like that, you are going to capture each and every versions, right? And then I think I have covered all except one thing. We need Swagger, right? We have added our Swagger dependencies. The next thing is we need a config file. So we need to create one config package and you need to create one class. So I have just created a class called textbook service Swagger config class, which extends base Swagger config class, which is an abstract class. And for this Swagger, I need to add one configuration because it's a configuration class. So when our Spring Boot starts, this will load uh, from the beginning and it will create this instance and add it to the Spring Boot container. And we need to like tell us upfront that enable Swagger documentation or enable the Swagger features. So for that, we need to add another annotation called enable Swagger 2. So these two are mandatory. Then the other functionality will explain. So let's go to this base Swagger config class. So here you can see this is a config class, okay? And what we are doing. So when we load our Swagger, right, Swagger UI, we need to show in the Swagger UI what is our application name. So for that, these things we have already captured in our YML file. So Spring application name. So this name we have to show in the Swagger, and so that we have just added here, right? Um, so we are just reading this value from YML file, and how we will read the value from YML by using the at value annotation. So this similarly, I'm just reading the app version from YML file by using this. So once you'll get the app name and version, you can create one method. So I've just created one method which will return a docket bin. So this is a bin, right? So the configuration class, in this configuration class, you are returning a bin. So which kind of bin? This is the docket bin. This docket bin is actually provided by Spring Fox. You can see the docket bin is somewhere here, right? So Spring Fox provide this. This method name can be anything, but your bin name should be docket. Okay. And now, since you are returning, you are expecting this method should return docket. So you have to create the docket bin object. So you are creating new docket and you have to pass one parameter like documentation type. So you are you want to create a Swagger 2 supported documentation, right? So you can pass Swagger 2. Then you want to add, like they have a API info as a method. So you have to add API information. So API information means your application information, your endpoint, REST endpoint information. So for that, you can add your application name, description, version, title, whatever, right? Depends upon your configuration in application variable file. So since I have added these two, only application name and application version, I have created one method, API info. So this is a private method. You can see API info, and this API info must return API info. And this API info is also provided by SpringFox. Okay. And then we have another like uh, you can say the way to create API info. You cannot create like new API info, right? So it's a this way you need to create. So you have to create a API info builder. Okay. And this also provided by SpringFox. And there is a title, and you have to add your title, which is nothing but my application name, version, which is nothing but application version. We can have other things like description and some other things, and dot build. So in this way, you are creating API info and passing to this API info method. Okay. And then there is other things like select and the APIs. In this APIs method, you are saying any kind of request you are accepting. Okay. So when you are writing different endpoints, right, whatever request is coming from server, you are accepting all. So then paths also, whatever, like you don't have any restriction. So any path, like basically when you create your this one, right, um, endpoints, so any path you can give, so it will accept. So that's the reason we have given here the paths is path selector at any and build. So this is the basic configuration required for Swagger. Okay. Once everything is done, we can now start our application, right? We can just right click and start our application. You can see our application is running on 85. Okay. Now let's run it. Okay. So http://localhost and 8085. This is my context path and /swagger UI. So in this way, you can load, right? And you can see the textbook inventory application. This is nothing. It is coming from the application name, which you have defined here, right? And the version is coming from here, which you have also added here, right? And that version also you have defined in your POM file, nothing but this. So like that, it will work, right? And then this is the your Swagger 2 documentation. You can see, go through it. And then this is your controller, right? Let's test it. So this is your basically the uh, payload. Just copy it. I have already have certain data. So let me copy and paste it here. So you can remember, so you are creating this, right? So for this, you don't need ID. You don't need modify at because you are creating, right? You don't need modify by. So just put null null, remove the ID and just test it, right? And see Mongo, one data is created on the MongoDB. So you can come here and you refresh. You can see the Mongo books is created here, Java 500, something, 100, 1000. And then you can come to version head. You can see one record also created here with version 0. This is the counter 0, one version only. And this book ID is nothing but what? See, 95A10. If you look books, if you see this, it's a 95A10. So this ID, it will be the ID of this version textbook. And what is this book type? Content type, it's a textbook only. All right. So similarly, if you go to this book version, it has also book version 0 because this is the first document. This ID is nothing but your textbook Mongo ID. The type is textbook, and then it has a snapshot. So what it contains? It contains your copy of your original content. So now this content, because the version is 0, so this content as well as this content is same. Okay, so now let's basically modify, right? So now I will copy this. Now I will go to your update. This is something you are updating, right? Once you will create and based upon this data, you need to update. So what I need to update? I need to update last modified by who modified. So I'll say Robin created, but Robin are modified, right? And then I'll say at what time it got modified. So I'll say, I'll just change it to 22. And then I'll say the title is 5.5. And now I'll say it's a 120 and price is 1200, right? Now execute. Now see another, it updated actually. So it will come here and see books, and now see Java 500, 1000, it will change. So if we refresh, now it changed to 5.5, 120, 1200, and Robin, and modified by Robin R. So what your previous record updated, you don't have previous record here. So how will compare? For that, you have to come to your version head. So in this version head, this is the counter. Before it was 0, right? Now it is 1. That means one time it got modified. Then how to get who modified, what content got modified, all these details, you have to come to book versions. So in this book version, you can see the original is version 0, and this is the second modification. And if you can expand, so you'll get what got modified. You can compare, you can find. So this got modified, and here this is the original data. So likewise, if we'll do one more time, right? So here I will say 5 point, okay, I'll say it is 5.5.1. I'll say it is 130, price is 1300, like that. If I'll update once again and come here. So now you can see the book, and you refresh it. So it got changed, right? And in version head, you can say it's now 2. And you come back to book version, you can see version 0 is there, right? And version 1 is also there with all this data. Version 2 also there with all these details. Now you can query the version 2 data from MongoDB. This is one JSON data. You will get version 1 JSON data. You can get version 0 JSON data, and you can compare these JSON values, and you can generate a report. So what got changed in version 0 to version 2, and who has modified, what time it got modified, why it modified, all this information you can capture. So this is the agenda basically, to like to know how to achieve versioning of the content by using Spring Boot data MongoDB. Okay, and hopefully I have explained it uh, clearly. At least you should understand. And if it is not, you can go through one more time, and or let me know in the comment box. If, because this is my even first video, I'm trying my best, but I would like your response in the comment box, so that it will help us, basically help me to do better and better in future, right? And I will request you, if you like uh, this topic or this concept, and then like my channel TechieTaught and subscribe, and this will actually motivate us to add more and more content. This is mainly good for self-learning, as well as at the same time I think we all can learn from this, right? um, then thank you so much, keep watching, and please subscribe, like, and if possible comment as well. So thank you all. Bye.